Good morning, I'm WaywornWyrm, and welcome to my channel. And welcome to Like Grains of Sand, Episode 1, Planning. To say that Albert Smith was frustrated would be underselling what he felt in that moment. He was standing in one of the observation decks that allowed one to look out of the town of Westhorpe, and out onto the frozen wasteland that was most of Aussie. Behind him, waiting in chairs, sat the main members of his crew. Anne Chapman, a mechanic without compare, who had joined the crew of his ship a few months prior. Charlotte Taylor, a clergy member who was as quick and accurate with a religious quote as she was with her gun. And finally, there was James Davies, his pilot, who had been with Albert for years, and a former soldier from when Aries was participating in the war that was ravaging its surface. The crew knew better than to interrupt him. James and Charlotte had been working for Albert for years, though Charlotte not nearly as long as James, and they had quickly clued Anne into that fact, among others. Albert knew this, of course, and he appreciated it. He had to think his way through his emotions before they could sit down and start working out the plan. And he would need all the help he could get with this plan. It was going to be a doozy. Finally, he stopped staring at the snow and ice and turned back to face his people. So, I had a meeting with Joan Miller, one of the bureaucrats here in Westhorpe, about a job. And as you can tell from my mood, it did not go overly well. The good news is the Aries can stay in dock for this mission. We shouldn't be leaving town, let alone the planet. The bad news is this is quite the illegal gig. A frown passed over James's face for a second. Begging your pardon, boss, but we've never let something like illegality stop us from doing a job in the past. What makes this one different? It's true. I've never been one to comment on how legal something is or isn't, especially with how often we go from planet to planet in this patchwork we find ourselves in, and how different the laws are in each. However, this time it's different for two reasons. Firstly, it's very far past the line that separates illegal from legal. Secondly, we're sticking to one jurisdiction this time. It's going to be clear from the beginning that we will be breaking the law, and there's no coming back from it or talking our way out of it if we get caught. So a bit of background. Joan is going for an elected position in the upcoming elections. She wants to become the Lord of Westhorpe. Good on her. The problem is, right now, she has no chance of winning against Lord Blanche Cook, who currently holds the spot. That's how she started our meeting off. It was clear that she was thinking of something, but it took far longer than it should have to get her to come out and say what she wanted. Apparently, there are rumors that Lord Blanche Cook has been embezzling money from certain charities that the nobles in town have been giving to. If that's true, and Joan can leak proof of that to the press, it will turn the entire noble class of Westhorpe against Blanche, and many of them would throw their support behind Joan. It might not be enough to win the election, but it would probably end the career of Blanche Cook, and will most likely cause a special election if Blanche still manages to win. It was Anne's turn to chime in. And that's where we come in, isn't it? We will be breaking into the Lord's house and locating proof of embezzlement, and we'll be stealing it to give back to Joan to help her win. Albert nodded. Exactly. Apparently, We were not on the top of Joan's list of who to hire. In fact, the only reason why we were on it at all is one of her clerks noticed the pattern in who she was having meetings with, and he had heard of us through our work at the factory quite some time ago. Apparently, he had some sort of cousin or something there, so he convinced her to give us a meeting. And apparently, no one else either could or would take the job. Sounds like she wasn't too keen on getting us, James mused. No, not at all. For one reason, she's not sure we have the stuff. And for another, while the Smiths don't own any land or anything near here, my family is still a big enough deal here on Azzy that if we get caught, the ensuing scandal would be massive, and it would be very difficult for the blowback to not land on Joan and end her career, if not her life as a free person. The entire time, Charlotte had been silent, but then she ended that. This is going to be one tough nut to crack. The Lord's house is not a part of the city. It's off on his own, about 1 kilometer away from the closest access point. Excepting the underground stop, of course. But there's no way we'll be able to take the underground for what we're trying to do. We'll have to make the trek overland, outside. I imagine we will need some specialist hardware to break in without leaving a trace. We'll need maps. What would be good is look at the Lord's daily planner, but there's no way that's going to happen. This is going to be the hardest job we've ever done. But I think we can pull it off, boss, she said, looking up to Albert at that last bit, the hard lines of concentration fading from her face. Albert acknowledged her. That sounds about right. We've got a palm-sized device that should be able to enter the correct codes into one of the surface maintenance entrances to the Lord's house. We'll have to get in and out without anyone knowing we were there if this plan is to work. If Lord Cook learns of the break-in before our patron announces the news, you can bet your last credit that the records will be altered just enough so it looks like it was someone else doing it under the Lord's nose without her knowledge, let alone approval. James looked down at his combat rifle for a second. Either that, or we have to go in balls to the wall and do a ton of damage to mask what we're after. Albert shrugged. Or that, I guess. Okay, let's get everything ready. We'll go explore the options for making the trek and start scouting in the morning. I need everyone to get a good night's sleep tonight and be up at first light so we can have the rental done by early enough to do some scouting in the daylight. Thank you so much for listening to the first episode of Like Grains of Sand. Make sure to tune in on May 17th for the second episode, and be especially sure to tune in tomorrow to the Friday show. I have several announcements to make that I've already announced most of them, but I have some knowledge that firms up a lot of things, and so this will be an extra special Friday show. Thank you.